right, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might be. Thank you for joining. We appreciate your patience. If any of you would mind chatting in the chat box, can you hear me? In our previous study hall session, there were some people that could not. Excellent.
Woohoo.
We've learned from previous mistakes. We got into it about 10 minutes and then noticed that nobody could hear us, so we didn't want to replicate that mistake. All right, thank you. So we are going to get started here. So thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us for the K12 study hall session for Masterpath. We have Leslie Stark as our guest presenter from our product engagement team, and we are really excited to have her cover Masterpath, hopefully share some good insight for you on how to use Masterpath and give you a brief overview of what it is for those of you that are just learning about it. And at the end, we'll hold a Q&A, so we'll be able to answer a lot of those questions. So if you do have questions as they come up, maybe throw them in the chat box and or write them down so that we can get to those at the end. We'd like to have Leslie just take the time to go through everything first, and then we can do some Q&A towards the end. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Leslie, and we'll get started.
Perfect. Well, hi. Thank you all for joining, and thanks for making that adjustment on the fly last week. It was a little bit of a crazy, bumpy day for us all. So excited to be here sharing with you kind of Masterpath, again, that high-level overview, and then chatting and answering those different questions. Being a former classroom teacher, kind of I'll take the approach of like how I would initially use this. It doesn't mean it's the only way, but just some good tips and tricks for getting started, especially introducing something that is a bit more robust and a bit more in-depth for usage. It's not your kind of right out of the box first feature to share with teachers. Might overwhelm some of those technically challenged or nervous folks, but kind of some good tips, tricks, and strategies around it. So we'll go ahead and get started. There we go. So kind of Masterpath 101. So it's all about simplifying teaching and elevating learning. So we want to start with a problem. So the problem here is that we have a lot of different students at a lot of different levels. They're being all brought into kind of a way that they need to be conformed and taught the same curriculum, taught at the same time. And as those of us who are educators, we know that people learn in different ways, on different days, in different styles. So we know that there is a lot of academic diversity. We have kind of a fun little graphic here of our diversity. So it's not a one-size-fits-all for our students. We want to be able to adequately spend that time personalizing and individualizing their learning to their learning style and helping with their learning style. But at the same time, we need to make this manageable. If you are a secondary teacher, you're teaching possibly 180, 220. I really hope you're not having to teach 300 students, but it's possible. And if you're in elementary, you are teaching, 24, 35 very different little beings all day long, their content. So we recognize that there's academic diversity and that that's difficult sometimes for you to be able to respond to their needs immediately. There's also, and this is a huge phrase that's out there in the academic community, things rolling out like ESSA. This is a big component of that, where it's this equality versus equity. So we have these high standards, and schools have these elements that they need to target and achieve and master and show proof of growth and understanding. So with this, we recognize that that's kind of difficult. So we've got high standards. We know that there are millions and millions of great teachers out there, but time becomes a huge item, and that individual support. So Masterpath is about trying to help with that equity, and again, that delivery and that personalizing for those students. And again, I'm really going to focus on using things like personalized and individualized education. I will tap onto how it's not adaptive learning. I've been on site recently, and folks are like, oh, it's adaptive, it's adaptive. It's not adaptive in the true definition of adaptive. So we'll go into that. So our solution here at Instructure, Masterpath. Oh, there we go. Delay on slides. So what I'm going to do is get into my instance and live demo, which we always cross our fingers because sometimes things misbehave, as we know. And even when we're presenting in front of teachers, it's like I'm supposed to be clicking this, and Canvas, you're just having a moment. So I'll go ahead and move in, and then we'll follow up and have tons of time for questions. Oh, find out. All right. Okay, so I'm in my course, and I've been teaching this course for 6 years, so I have lots and lots of content. I know that I'm going to use modular structure with my students, even if it's behind the scenes. Your teachers, you may have a common template for a home page. You may have modules as your home page. The great thing about Canvas is that we can all, really design it and style it as necessary. I personally came from a school very big on the agendaed view, and then the students can just link right into whatever they need. So my first item, I'm going to go ahead and go into modules. And I've got kind of an introduction to class, but then I have my first unit, and I've created a mastery path for it. So when I take this geography pretest, and I really pick on starting out, especially with mastery paths, to learn and to play with them, doing this in a pre-assessment type way, because again, you're wanting to see what students know and understand prior to starting your unit, and then you can start tailoring and adjusting and individualizing as needed for those students. So I've gone in and I've demoed as a couple of students already, and I can see nobody's aced this test, unfortunately. But I can see these two students, so my test student and Steve Rogers here, how they've done. And I can even track here to see kind of what his score was. I could view the submission. I can move from student to student, kind of view how they've done, just as a quick overview and glance. As more and more items become loaded into the mastery path, this will start to kind of create like a scorecard and accrue more information on that student. So a good rule of thumb in starting out, and I'm going to pop back over to modules so we can look at kind of this module itself. As I set this up, now maybe I already had something that's going to get pathed. You don't want to path everything, as exciting as it is. It's a concept map. It is backwards design plus basically for your teachers, and it's the ability for your teachers to say, if I had time, what would I give them as a support to help with? And what would I give them to get additional information? So the nice thing here, Canvas is kind of letting me know that this is part of a path, and even when I hover here, released in Mastery Path, as the teacher, I'm seeing everything. You'll always see everything. Your students will only see what's being released to them. So again, going back into this pretest, not many points to it. I have created that path. Canvas is going to warn me, students have taken this, which is great. We love that warning. And I've decided, if they get between 6 and 8 points, they'll move on directly to this group activity. If they get between 4 and 5.999, they will move on to this path here. I can opt in to have an or, so they could look at this page or that page. Or I can have all ands, and in this one I opted in for all ands. If they're between 0 and 4, again, I'm not wanting to give my students additional work. I'm wanting to kind of give them more support for what they might need. So my students who are in this kind of lower, remedial bucket on this concept, they will get more resources to help them. And each of these content pages, we can dive into those. I've just put videos that are kind of supporting, what are the 5 themes of geography, maybe a PowerPoint or something that I've embedded here that has kind of their geography review, longitude and latitude, just different concepts that they may have missed. So in that pre-assessment with the questions, it won't, in an adaptive sense, it would say, oh, here's the 3 questions you missed and the exact resource that you need. Instead, I'm planning ahead thinking, well, you may have had an issue with the 5 themes of geography. You may have had an issue with latitude and longitude. They can then get the extra additional support. So it's really taking that student-centered learning element and helping them to dive in and take their own ownership for what they're learning. With our little guys, we'll want to guide them through it. But if you design it in a little bit of an active and engaging and, here's resources to help you out. I can even put, a quiz in again that they could retake. I can tell them in these content pages, hey, watch all these videos and you've got another option to retake that quiz, and they can, open up my quiz settings to say that they can take it multiple times, multiple attempts sort of element. So numerous options. And rather pretty straightforward in that build of it. So one question that will come up, and it's already come up as I've shared when being on site and presenting and just chatting with folks, now do I have to go back through all those different content pages and select which pages need to be in Masterpath? Yes, you do. I'm going to go ahead and go into pages and view all pages. So it does have a little bit of that moment, but this is where, again, teachers get that chance to really guide and map out what the students need and what they're going to see. So I know my next unit's going to go into exploration, and I can just click edit. And then right here, come in, allow in mastery path. So it's not assigning it to where it needs to go, but when I'm ready for creating the next element and the next assessment that's going to be pathed, I will have this as an option to be able to add it into the path. So similar to, if you've been playing with differentiated assignments, it behaves in the similar way where students, once they're tracked along the path that they're on, it will release just to them the information that they need. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to a quiz to start from scratch with adding a path. So I have had for many years my Constitution pretest, and it's just your standard, here's my pretest, the information, everything, it's due this Friday. I have not pathed it yet, and students have not taken this yet. So I'll edit. And then again, it is a feature flag, forgot to mention that, to turn on Masterpath. So right now, as you're looking at this and thinking, okay, maybe we want to initially pilot this with a few of our power users after the winter break, it can be turned on to an allow, not an on for your instance. And then your teachers can then decide, okay, I'm ready to look at this and try some things out, or if they're not ready yet, this is kind of overwhelming, you want to tackle it in a summer PD or just tackle it over a whole quarter, kind of going from January through April of what's happening. You can slowly release this for an optional item. So my quiz, it's 50 points, and I know that I want students that are in this kind of higher level, they're going to be able to move on. I can sort. So I know that there's a quiz that I want them to move on to once they've taken this pre-assessment, that they'll just go right into Western expansion. For the students who score between 64 and a 90, they're going to get a lot more information. So I know there were some pages. So I want to give them these couple of pages. And then I may add those. And then I also want to add in maybe another assessment. The cloud assignment sample. So again, all ands, but I might say or, one or the other here. And then for those that get between 0 and 32, we're going to give them a lot of information. And I do have the ability, I'm kind of being slow on my pickup of items. We'll give them an and an or. I can drag and drop and change the order of these. There it goes. So now if I wanted those notes. So you can always move these different items around. And I played with this earlier, so if you're needing to remove something, you change your mind, you can remove different items for it. So once I've set that path of kind of where students will go. So the big item that I really want to stress, I can't say we, what's my universal we, but that I really want to stress, when you're building out or cleaning up those modules, the biggest place that you're going to have hangups and hookups, or your teachers will have hangups, is in the space of the restricting content and having items not trigger or unlock in a kind of in an individualized and personalized, timely manner. So I've now taken this first Constitution pretest, and I actually cleaned out my module so that I could then add back in the items that I'd want and not lock these different items. So hopping back over to modules, it's always kind of checking back and looking at what's being required and how here I have restrictions that they have to submit, and these are some of their notes that they're submitting. And then based upon how they scored on this pretest, they'll have access to this page. because it is in the module. It doesn't have to be in the module, though. And then they just continue to move on to their different items, and here's this, it's released in the Mastery Path. Oh, sorry, a little bit of lag.
We did have a couple questions too. I don't know if you want to maybe answer some.
Yeah, let's answer some questions. So that's a good kind of high level. Let's dive deeper. I know you guys are going to have lots of questions, so I'm peeking over at Clint's screen, and then I'll just start reading them. So if it's in a Mastery Path, the first question, if it's in a Mastery Path, is it available to everyone in the class or only in those in the path? So that's a great question. In the initial setup, and I know it's in our kind of guided notes of setting up Mastery Paths, the initial assessment, so my pretest here, is available to everyone, and then from that next level, it will start differentiating. So it's going to behave like differentiated assignments. So I'm going to pick on those in the room with me because that's how I like to teach. So if Clint goes on to that kind of highest level path, he's only going to see, he's very happy I said he could be on the highest, poor Cam now. He will be able to track out to just the items that he sees. So he has no idea that other items exist in that path. So it will start differentiating those assignments. So even if initially you set them up as everyone sees, once it paths, it is going to work into that differentiated assignment behavior. So then if Cam goes on to that lower level, a remedial level, he will get all those other resources. Now, in my example for this pretest, and I kind of took it in a very minimal, not an extra complex view, Cam, everybody was getting the group activity assignment, but he will have other resources that he needs to look at. So let me click in there so I can really continue talking through that. But he'll have those other resources to look at what before. Now, in the sense of true differentiation, as a teacher, I am going to build out different leveled assignments after that quiz, possibly. And that is going to be, I'll assign it for everyone initially as I build it, but then it will only, because it's pathed, it will only be released to those who need it. So in this sense of maybe, this is my accelerated group, my gifted and talented, my exceptional, whatever you call them in your state or country, this would be that type assignment, and then Clint would get that assignment. Cam would have no idea that assignment even exists. And it will behave like differentiated assignments. If Cam doesn't get assigned that top assignment, it's going to be blocked out in the gradebook so that it's not showing a possibility to type in that score. And then if this one down here in this kind of remedial track is what Cam receives and Clint has no idea it exists, again, in the gradebook, it's going to behave in that differentiated way. So the initial setup is that everyone has access to these, but then because it's in this released path, they'll only see it when it's been triggered for them. So hopefully that helps with that question. It was very in-depth, I hope, too. Okay. So if you allow additional submissions / multiple attempts, are the paths reconfigured for the student? So I asked some engineers back over the summer, and they're still kind of muddling through exactly how that's going to work. So the short answer is yes for the student, no if you as the teacher go in and decide, ooh, I don't like the choices that I made. So your initial decisions here in this initial setup, so my decisions between 6 and 8 points, 4 and 6 points, and 0 and 4 points are set. It's not going to change the track if I go, oh my gosh, I was way too tough on those students to track them. But if a student goes in and takes this, if I give them multiple attempts on this pre-assessment to kind of better and get out of the track that they're in, or the path that they're in, I should use the word path, they will be able to move themselves out of it. So again, teacher won't be able to say, ooh, mistake on my part, but student can, if you do allow that open assessment, be able to do that. So I know, again, I brought that up with our engineers, and I'm sure, this is just the beginning phases of it, and getting used to kind of this part. It will grow from here. There is a roadmap for additional items. I don't know it perfectly well. I'm not on the product team over it, but as we know, we'll have more sessions around that. So next question. We did that, okay. Is there an interaction with the other pages or some other way to hold students accountable? So I'm going to assume in the ability to say, we love in modular progression, there's ability to say students must view, students must submit, students must. This is where you want to be careful because we love that module restriction. And that's why I say a good best practice, especially for starting out, is to not overly pass things. Because if you start putting in those double layer of requirements, unfortunately, bad things are going to happen. Students are going to get hung up. You're going to get messages late at night. I can't move on. You're saying this is due. Panic attacks occur. Stress happens. So the idea of being able to still restrict in that view and tracking that element, it's not quite there yet with that kind of restrictions within the path. So still have your expectations in your module. Keep those things that you know for sure you want everyone viewing and doing, and then just add the additional components that are going to be that reteach, that you maybe don't have time to reteach 40 of your 200 students, or reteaching 5 of those little guys that need that help kind of element. So I know not a perfect answer on being able to still aggregate that information on who's viewed what and time spent. If you are worried about a student in specific, there is the ability to go into like the user details and see what the students have been clicking on. But when you look at that in math, that becomes a little bit overwhelming. Okay, next question. Can we set up requirements within the path? For example, students have to score 10 out of 12 on a quiz before moving on to the next path item. So it will still behave in modules. So if I had set up on this quiz that they needed to score a certain item, it will hold them back for whatever is in the module. So I'm still going to use modules to its great, really deep extent, but as the teacher, I'm going to really double check and triple check that I don't have something that is going to hang them up in the module. So the nice thing here, I have this visual. Oops, it has lag. I apologize. I'll wait for 1 second. I minimized my. Are you okay?
I think so.
Okay. Quince has major lag, so I want to make sure and double check, and I can even kind of double check myself. So I have they must view this 5 themes of geography. It's showing me this is released in the past for those who are at 0 to 4 points. So I may want to eliminate that view, but I can still keep my score at least for this test. I can give them multiple attempts. I could put a score at least on this pretest. And then again, I want to make sure that whatever it is I'm needing them to do in the path that I designed, everyone is having to do this 5 themes of geography group activities. So I'm safe in the sense of saying keep taking it until you get to that highest level and you track yourself out of it. So it really is a very in-depth kind of concept map look of what content you're delivering. Again, an initial best practice is going to be looking at your path and thinking, what additional resources would I want to give those students to remediate them or to help them along that I don't have to then deliver to everyone. So my accelerated kids can just move right on. They've got, their other activities that they'll do after they're finished. My, moderate kids, they're going to just get a little bit of extra help. And then my remedial kids, what can I really give them so that they can push themselves and find those gaps in what they're learning? I have not. Okay. So next one, what types of activities do you have those who have mastered the content do right away? So these are going to be, so personally for me, I can't say for all educators, and definitely chime in the chat if you've got ideas and things that you would, love to share of what you would do. So I would look at those who are ready to move on, and this is where you don't want to give them things like, oh, goodness, I don't know what to do with you. Here's a crossword or here's a word search. It's things that I'm going to take my Constitution unit. So if my students are looking at, the United States Constitution and they've aced the Bill of Rights, they remember all the great songs, they remember all of those items. Now I'm going to give them an activity where they can dive deeper. And I'll say, so for this week's current event or for the next 3 weeks of our current events, I'm going to give you time to work on this. I want you to find in current event news where, the first 3 amendments are being dealt with, or the first, the next 4 are. So I would take it and maybe even Google, depth of knowledge questions and set up a discussion for those students with some sort of a higher order thinking question prompt and get them talking and chatting to really, help them push one another further and deeper. And then as the teacher, I can go in and just monitor what they're doing. I could even, based on my unit, create a group, and students who, go, and I can see quickly the scores of those students, add them into this group, and they can now have kind of their own little canvas space to work on a different kind of, a higher order thinking project. It's not to say that the other kids couldn't do that, but I just want to catch them up and spend that time. So some things that I would leverage would be areas of my content where I wanted to drive them and push them further. And they're going to research it on their own, give them some engaging question prompts and activities that will really help them catapult off. Let them know, hey, I don't love Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is a crowdsourced item. Start there, start researching, see what people say, and then dive deeper. Work on those research skills that we've been working on all year. Leverage the different outcomes and items that I want to tackle with those students. You'd be surprised, it's a little nerve-wracking, but you'd be surprised at what they'll do. So again, I'm big on just Googling higher order thinking questions or web's depth of knowledge question stems, and then insert content here of what I want them to drive with further. I'm not great at writing those questions, but I'm great at big borrowing and stealing them from the internet. So,
quite a few questions here that I'm sure there's stuff you want to get to, or we might even cover, but what does your
gradebook, what it looks like, so my gradebook is not going to have everything fully built out, but your gradebook is just going to end up with all of those different assignments starting to come into this area, and then as students path, and I haven't fully fleshed out my path, and I can do that later and follow it up with some screenshots into the community of just with these test students and what that will look like. Different items will gray out, and they won't have access into them. So it's just going to be that nice long list of kind of activities, these different items if they're not being assigned that assessment. So maybe with this geography B test and A test, some of them would be grayed out, some of them would be, still have these dashes. So I can build out a few more items, spend a little bit more time here and create a screenshot of that and kind of give a little bit more fleshed out look. But you will have, just like differentiated assignments behaves, students who don't have any access to that activity. So the next question, if I do the geo or latitude and 5 themes, do they always get the 5 themes, or does that need to be set up as geo and 5 themes or lat and 5 themes? So it's the latter of it. It will need to be set up as the geo and 5 themes or latitude and 5 themes to help them. So you'll want to make sure when they get that or choice, that is giving the students choice. It really works best because what you're going to find right now, and I know there's discussion happening for us behind the scenes in that space as well, when you're in creating the master path, once you've selected that assignment once, you're not going to be able to select it twice. So instead, it's thinking up what to and or assessments. So again, giving those students choice. Do I want to make a video? Do I want to have a discussion? Do I want to submit an assignment? Is it this assignment that I want to do or that assignment that I want to do for that assessment? Okay.
I can ask a clarification.
So, and again, I think so the next question is kind of on how does this affect grading? So you're still going to have speed grader. You're still going to see who's been pathed. It's going to skip. It's not even going to bring the students into speed grader that did not go on to that path because that assignment is not assigned to them. It will still be up to the teacher, late points versus on time versus when things are due and kind of how they practice with their grading. Now, where this will affect, so one big question that has come up that might be, I'll get to that question in a second, yeah.
Right.
But another question that might come up, if I'm creating in my path different assignments for students to complete, and maybe they have different point values, so instead of having everybody still complete the same assignment at the end, even after they've had their resources, I have different assignments and they're different point values, so this is showing these are all 50-point assignments, but instead maybe for this one I remove, and I'll instead add in this test correction that's only worth 2 points. The gradebook is going to be different for those students. So now these two sets of students will have this 50-point assignment, and then these students will only have a 2-point assignment. So this is where your assignment groups and how you kind of group those together, whether it's, by type of assignment, assignments, discussions, homework, class participation, or if it's by unit, that's going to play a factor. But in the big picture of this, my students here, their grade will still be factored off that 50 points, and my students here will just be factored off that 2 points. So, if these guys get 25 out of 50, that will be 50%. If these guys get 1 out of 2, it will be 50%. So that will still factor in and play the way it's supposed to. If, again, watching your assignment groups, if you weight your grades and you use assignment groups with weighting, same thing. It's going to only look at the students who have those different assignments. So all the calculations and the gradebook element of factoring in that raw data number will work the way it's supposed to work and it's intended to work. The drop lowest, drop highest, it will look at each student individually like it does now and look at the raw data score that they've got and drop their lowest or drop their highest or whatever parameters you've set. So that grading is a big question, and I know, and it's definitely come up before where folks have said, hey, this is going to be really hard because I have different assignments and maybe they're at different point values. So that might be something where, okay, when I go back through my assignments and I'm looking at where I'm sending students, do I want to make them all the same point value for my own sanity's sake? Does it matter to me if they're different? I'm trusting the calculations, that kind of item. So hopefully that answered that. Keep asking questions, going through these as fast as possible. So next question, do all your assignments, pages, quizzes, etc. appear automatically in the add activity pop-up when you're setting up the path, or do you have to set each resource before it will appear? So assignments, quizzes, and graded discussions. So let me rephrase on quizzes. Graded quizzes and graded surveys. It has to have the graded trigger to it for it to show up. Just open Q&A discussions will not show up, but graded discussions will show up. Now this is where you can get really tricky and have some fun. We have that feature that was released, probably 6-8 weeks ago that will say do not use in the final score for like assignments. You can check that box, like this does not count till the final grade, and have that where it's graded so it trigger into the path, but it's not adding into the value of their final gradebook score. So layers of fun here. The only items you have to go through and manually check to add into the path are going to be pages. Okay. Can we see what the student side looks like? So you can go in as test student, and this is where I always say test student and preview and publish and everything with test student is a great thing, but it has its limitations, of course. So when you go through as that test student, you kind of get that one-time trial. So that's where you will have to decide, am I going to middle of the road try this student out? Am I going to remedial try this student out? Or am I going to accelerate try this student out? You can do reset test student and go in again, click through and try it out. So your test student will allow you to go in, but you won't see all the paths. You'll only see what you're triggering for your test student to have. If you haven't published items, because it is live, you're in the semester or you're in the quarter or the trimester, that gets tricky, as you've set up different items. When you reset test student, then you have to go back through the previous items. So yes, you can go through test students. It may have, just some slow feelings of too many clicks to kind of get through all of that. And then you'll kind of decide how you're pathing your test student in that trial. The next question, will the teacher be able to post Masterpath assignments? I did that one just a second ago. Yep, that's okay. To the Power Teacher Gradebook. So in research for today's call, of course, I checked our different channels here to see all things student information systems, to check out choose Masterpath's channels. So there are different teams looking at this and trying to address it. It's 3 teams of engineers and product having to work together. You're looking at Masterpath's Gradebook and the Student Information Systems team. So today, December 13th, it is not passing back. It's behaving like differentiated assignments where it doesn't pass back. But it is on the radar. Our team is our Gradebook passback team is aware of it, and there's lots of discussions happening. So we're not saying please don't use it, but we do know that is a kind of sad point for PowerSchool and Skyward right now, and it's like, oh, we just got passed back and now this won't go. So we hear you, and they are looking at it. It's not a ignore issue. Okay. Next question, how does Masterpath interact with groups? So if discussions as part of a Masterpath are included and people are grouped, say to include conditional discussions for those needing it, is there any hitch or considerations for planning and designing? So I'm going to just try to address this in two parts because the second part I'm not fully have. But for the groups component, so if I add in a discussion here to this highest level, item, discussion, and I just now give them this daily warm-up journal. So these students would be added to this discussion and see that it's active. I'm not making, in my class, I don't have discussions open, so students can't just go and search random discussions. And I don't have it in my module, so again, they don't see that it's there. So these students will just be immediately, it will pop up into the next activity for them to do as this journal, and then these students will be grouped together. But Canvas isn't going to generate or like auto-populate from our people section the group, or where like you've triggered a group assignment. It's not going to auto-generate that element. Teachers will still manage or create this is a group assignment from either the assessment or the discussion. And then, hang on, there was a second part to that. So also included and people are grouped. So say to include conditional discussion for those needing it, is there any hitch or consideration? So again, it's just going to be, if you leave discussions wide open, students could click in there and then they can kind of see all those different discussions because we are leaving everything as an everyone. This, putting it in the path, will just conditionally release it. Again, it's a graded discussion for them to talk to one another. So there was kind of a, is this the same kind of differentiation you would include in any face-to-face class? Yes, it is. So this is, I mean, I don't know how many of you walked around passing out tests or passing out activities when before technology was there, and I would have things stacked in 3 different stacks, and as I walked by each child, I'd be like, you're from the top stack, and you're from the middle stack, and you're from the bottom stack, hoping that they did not notice which stack I was actually grabbing from. This is just a nice way to keep it more, to keep it private and to just let those students, they'll talk, kids talk, that's their job, to find loopholes to try and get around the system and to talk to one another about what's going on. But they will, they'll recognize that you're individualizing this for them. So same concept. If you've taught elementary school or you think about it, it's the, it's the Red Robin group and the Blue Jays and the Yellow Canaries kind of groups. And you're just now doing it in hopefully a more discreet way to give them the things that they need and being able to give that just in time, especially after a quiz. Here's the next set of resources that you need. Okay, so arrived a few minutes late. If you answered this already. Is it possible to create complex paths here? Is there any visualization of paths for individual students like a flow chart? So we don't have a flow chart yet. That's definitely been a big request. The best that we have today in its state, again, this is not done. This will continue to get massaged and built. There's deeper discussions of other levels of outcomes and things going to it, but not today, so I don't want to get into that can of worms. I'm sure I'll address that later in a fun community video at some point. But what we can see for the path now is this kind of, this is catch up, we caught up, okay. This is released by the mastery path. This is also released. This is showing, which path, if 2 of the paths had this item, it would show the 2, the multiple here will allow it. So again, there's not a flow chart that can just pop up and show, this is where you've designed everything. When I click mastery paths here, it's taking me back immediately into this test where I can, it takes it a second to load, but then it's showing, this is what you pathed and how you thought of it. So again, it's, first-year teachers with Canvas right out of the box, this is, it's very deep. And it's not to say they're not capable. You've got very tech-advanced teachers, but it is that kind of next-level thinking of, okay, now if they're not doing well on this, where am I going to send them next? Math is kind of one of the easiest subject areas, I believe, and I feel, to think about it because there is so much. Well, you didn't get multiplying fractions, so here's going to be 3 or 4 videos and activities you can do to show your mastery and how I'm going to pad you and kind of help with that scaffolding and that rebuild to get that foundational structure stronger. your language arts, that's going to be a little bit tougher because, all right, you didn't understand prefixes, but I was assessing you on both prefixes and suffixes. How do I make sure that I'm giving you the right information? And that's where this isn't adaptive. It still is the teacher needing to decide what's going to be best. And that's where one example I built with my pages for my Constitution information. If my students take that quiz and it's over the entire Constitution, I don't know what they don't remember. Maybe I create, so, review the preamble, and my students are like, oh, I don't need to review that. I aced that part. Okay, review Articles 1, 2, and 3, or review the Bill of Rights. So I put kind of sections within my content page of where the review materials are. So those students, they could watch all 3 of them, but if they're like, oh, well, I really struggled at just this part, they could watch that part again or get information to help with that. So again, just kind of making these review content pages maybe a little more, did you need help with this? Did you need help with that? Did you need help with? Okay. So if students already took a quiz, can you build a Masterpath off of that? You can. You will just want to be very open with them and say, hey, go back in, and it's going to trigger something that you need to do or you need some additional help with. So it's not a best practice, but we know that you've already kind of gone down the road of maybe having some students take an assessment. So you may want to start using it with the next unit or lesson or chapter or week that you're teaching with. Again, start out small with that quick pre-assessment, 5-question quiz. What do you remember from last week, or where are we at with our concepts, and help with that. So it's not going to behave best if you are kind of building the path after the fact. It is best built kind of beforehand. Is there a quick, so next question, sorry. Is there a quick way to duplicate pages, quizzes, discussions, and assignments within Path? For example, you start out with Advanced Masterpath assignment and quickly make a copy. You tweak the assignment and then make a change, a few elements, and add it to your middle of the road assignment. Oh, copy paste, that's why that really sad chuckle. So there's not right now an ability to say, oh, these were the things I had in that top path, move them immediately, duplicate it. I will toss that in the channel and ask some engineers, ask some product folks if that's something we can toss in there for some help of, again, that quick build and ease. We know that copy, whether you want to call it copy, quiz, duplicate assignment, mass create things that are the same thing. I'm right there with you. I had 40 current events due every Friday of the entire school year. It's the same assignment every week, nothing different, just it was due. That repetition, consistency is good for our kiddos, and I had to build every single one of them by hand each time in Canvas. So yeah, that copy assignment, we really want it, and copy here would also be a great thing as well. So I have not seen anything on any roadmaps, but I will share feedback. I'm always happy to share feedback of what we would love, our wish list. Student view, yes, I can definitely go in and show the student view. So, and I know there's been questions. You guys see exciting things on the side of my sandbox. Things are coming, good stuff. So we don't have it all out public yet. For me, it's been more demo and break things so that as you guys get questions in the upcoming months, I can help our customer success managers answer those and share that information. So sometimes I get things a little bit preliminary to push some boundaries and ask those teacher questions right away, and then help our customer success managers so that as Cam gets emails coming in, he can be like, oh, Leslie did answer that for us, and she shared with us, or she went and presented at one of our team meetings to help with that, and just to try and curve some of those initial, like, what if questions. So I know you're seeing those exciting things on the side. They're coming. They are coming. Okay, so test student. My test student has modules, and they have done some of those preliminary things. Hooray. You can see my test is not a great test here in just a second. So they have their grade, and next. So let me actually pop back into another space of to-do, which then means did I publish, which I didn't. Let me leave really fast and publish that last test quickly. So my module here, so I have a Masterpath for it, and I really have nothing else in this module. But Apologize for that delay. It's always the fine lessons of remembering to publish your modules. Okay. But we're really excited because Canvas is going fast. So, all right, take Constitution pretest. Take quiz. See how well I can ace this quickly for you all. All our great question types. Oh boy. Oop. We're just going to choose them at this point. So you can all judge. Like, wait, weren't you a history teacher? Don't you remember these things? I do, but speed and typos. Ooh, grammar and typos. But another great remembering that definition's always on the left and words on the right for your drop downs. All right, we'll just forget that. All right, we failed this quiz, that's okay. So when they submit, total failure, 20 out of 50 points. They now will have other items that they'll be able to go to and the help that they'll need. So again, I would set it up in the module, which I've not finished setting up, and they would have now their items that they can now do after. So here it is. Yay, it did work. So choose assignment groups as a student. So I didn't even have it in there to begin with. Now my student can see, okay, I'm going to probably choose fun, exit ticket, and notes, and besides all these different reviews and some bell work, but they'll have option 1, option 2. I do know, because a lot of you are like, preview, hello, I want my students to be able to truly choose and maybe get a chance. That is something that they are working on, to be able to preview what the items are so that they can have, a true authentic choice. Right now, it's just going to be, I might have to put on my whiteboard, here's when you finish this, these are your choices, and this is what they're about. So it's still in the preliminary phases. So my student will get to choose. I'm going to be a good student and choose this path. Oops, we select. And we may have a momentary glitch with that. There we go. Why are we not sticking? Well, that's okay. We will. That gives you that option, and I will find out why our selected is not selecting, but that's kind of what the student will see in kind of that view. So I have just a few more moments. I know that there's still lots of questions. Do you ever use graded complete checkmark but no points in your path? Absolutely. So behind the scenes, even with that, you always, if you notice in assignments and discussions and even quizzes, and quizzes doesn't have this feature yet, but in assignments and discussions, you can say, complete, incomplete checkmark, but there is a point value. So our gradebook works off of raw data. So even though it's showing the students green checkmark, red X, or it's showing them ABC, or if you've put in a standards-based grading, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever you're using, the point value is still behind the scenes. So your assignments, no matter what, will always have that raw data number. So even if you're only showing students the checkmark in the gradebook, there's actual numbers behind the scenes. Let's see, other questions. Wait, you failed the test. I know. Yep. So this is where, and again, I'll ping out to see why that didn't work. Yep, I definitely test through and fail things all the time. Definitely happens. So you guys have asked a ton of great questions. We recorded the session. It will go up in the community. I will commit to, hopefully by the end of today, I kind of have to look at how crazy the workload is, but getting some screenshots up and just posting them into the thread of like what my gradebook would look like as I'm passing out different items and things are grayed out for you all. So I'll just do a screenshot of that. They're all fake students, as you can see, so we're not in any issues of compliance or whatever there. No people will actually have their feelings hurt with the gradebook being shown.
Unless I'm included.
I might just do that. So, but anyway, But please continue to have the conversation in the community. I will be following up and checking, and if I don't, I'm sure I'll get nudged by Cam and Clint here saying like, hey, Leslie, chime in. So we'd love to continue to hear your thoughts and share, as this is growing. It's still in its infancy. There's a lot more, to develop and to grow with mastery paths, and just keep watching for more exciting things.
Awesome. Yes, I will agree with the rest of you. Thank you very much, Leslie. It was a great demo. We appreciate everybody who joined. Look for our next K12 study hall session. We'll be looking to do it next couple weeks in January as we get back from the holiday break. We did have a link there, if you guys see in the chat. If you would please fill out the Canvas Live survey to give us some feedback on how you felt the presentation went, and to just give us some feedback on some items on maybe what you'd like to see in the future as well. That would be awesome. So if you could take a second to fill that out, we'd greatly appreciate it. I'll also include the link in the thread of Canvas Live, and we'll also post the recording there later today. So if you have any questions, please do ask your customer success manager, and we appreciate your guys' time, and have a great day.